Hello, it is lovely to welcome you to Questions of Life. I'm Cath, I'm here with Donald and Shrade, and this is the next video on our subject tonight of how to forgive others. So let's get down to basics. Where do we start when we want to forgive someone? Talk us through the process.
So there's a long process, and I think we have to understand firstly what kind of hurt are we talking about, and because there are different degrees and there are different responses to those different degrees. So let's take about the easiest things is somebody's made a mistake.
Yeah.
They didn't intend to do it.
Yeah.
It's just accidentally happened and they've hurt us and we felt upset and damaged by it. Perhaps we recognize that they didn't understand. We learn from that.
Yeah.
So that kind of forgiveness, it's helpful to say, okay, they didn't mean to do it.
Yeah.
And okay, I've been hurt, but it wasn't their intention. And that's the easiest form of forgiveness. It's not always the most common, but so a first step is to say, did they mean this? Did they intend this? This is really, have I misunderstood something? Was it accidental? That's easy. So we work on that. The next step is to say, okay, somebody has done something deliberate. It was intentional. Their desire was to hurt me, but they are now sorry.
Yep.
So that's a different level. They're apologizing, but they at the time they meant it. They said it, but now they wish they could take it back.
Yep.
And again, our process then is to say, okay, I hear that they're apologizing, and we maybe say, we might need to take a day or two. We might need to take a little while. We might not want to say straight away. We might say, look, give me a few hours. We might want to say to God, Lord, will you help me to forgive? I want to forgive, but will you help me to forgive? And we may want to say, yep, I forgive you. We may want to just say, okay, but the relationships are going to need to be a little different now. So because of that, we just need to have some different boundaries. And if that becomes more of a common thing, where there is a lot of, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it, but then a lot of repetition, then we need to make those boundaries more firmer. And we need to say, I do forgive you, but I need to protect myself from you doing this again.
Yep.
So there's an element where I can't trust that this is the last time you're going to do it, because it isn't this isn't the first time. So particularly maybe in the area of domestic abuse, we are very clear, this can't go on.
Yep.
I have to leave.
Yep.
Or you have to get help, or whatever it is, it can't go on. So there's that whole area. The next area is where a person does something and they're not sorry. And perhaps it's finished and it's done, it's happened, but they weren't sorry and they don't offer any apology to us. Now that's the next degree up. That's a much harder step, particularly when what they have done may be life-changing. Maybe our lives will never be the same because of what they've done. And on those kind of things, I think we need to give ourselves plenty of time and understand that this is going to be a difficult journey. And the journey I like, and it is there's 4 prayers. The first prayer is this: Lord, help me to want to forgive someone.
So that fits perfectly in with this question that I've just got from Louise. And she says, if you don't feel you can forgive them, how do you move on from that? Does that mean there is no hope for you? Yeah. So that's the very place that you're speaking about right now.
So when we get to these really serious things, our initial thing is, I can't forgive them.
Yeah.
And what often happens is there's a sense of turmoil. There's a part of us that feels we want to, but there's a big part that says, I can't.
Yeah.
And so that's where I would say to God, I want to forgive.
So you're saying, I don't feel right now that I can forgive, so you're going to have to help me to have that feeling that, okay, I want to.
Yeah. I don't even want to forgive.
Yes.
But there's a part of me that knows that that's going to be the best thing for me.
Yeah.
And so, Lord, help me want to.
Yes.
And make that prayer every day or so, a regular prayer.
Yeah.
And I think what you will discover over a period of time and I'm going to come to the most difficult form of forgiveness in a moment because we're still at stage 3 of the 4. Over time, that you've begin to have a different attitude such that your prayer can become, Lord, help me I want to forgive, help me.
So do you think in that first prayer it's also helpful to express why you don't want to forgive them?
Yes.
So like, they've done this, I
Yes.
feel this, they're out of order.
Yes.
How can they do that?
Yes.
And all of that angst, that anger, that tension, that hurt, that pain, get it out.
To
and
God.
Say, to God, this is why I don't want it, this isn't fair.
Yes.
All of those things
Yes.
that kind of stop us wanting to forgive, just get it off your chest.
Yeah, I think it's really important to express it, get it out. It's sometimes helpful to visualize, to write it and then burn the piece of paper or flush it down, maybe not flush it down, put it in water and wrap it around a stone and throw it into one of the pools in a Sutton Park. Somewhere, just get out all the anger, all the hurt.
And that's a journey, isn't it? So this first prayer can sometimes be the longest prayer.
Yeah.
But it's really important. It's a really important question that there is hope, that you may feel that you're at this point number 1, but if you keep persevering with it and expressing it and saying, God, you need to help me to want to forgive, over time that we have seen with many, many people, we've seen that change and they've got to the next point.
Yes, yeah. There's loads of stories in our church and in life of people that have worked that journey, and it's different time schedule for all kinds of people. And as you begin to pray, Lord, I want to forgive, there will come a time when you think, I'm ready to forgive. And that isn't the end of the process.
No.
Because that may be what you choose that day, that the next day you're going to wake up and not feel it. And so it's, Lord, help me to keep on forgiving. And Lord, help me to stay with this decision that I felt today. But like a lot of decisions, we can make them at one point and then at a low point or at night time or early in the morning, we waver.
Or something triggers it.
Yeah.
So maybe someone gets in touch. Sorry.
Well, that takes us on to the 4th and the hardest area, which is where a person is continuing to still hurt us. So I'm trying to forgive somebody not just for what they've done, for what they're doing, and what they're going to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
Now, that is the hardest area to forgive. And I think in those areas we need to be very gentle with ourselves and say, this is really difficult to do until I've stopped them doing it. So I need to get out of this situation, of this relationship, or this place of work, or this community where I'm being exposed to this hurt, that it's really difficult to forgive someone who is not aware of it or not remorseful and is continuing. In other words, they're being abusive.
Yeah.
And I think that's when we have to get out.
Yeah.
If it's an abusive domestic violence, an abusive relationship, we have to leave before we can begin the journey of forgiveness. That it's actually not a good idea to try and forgive someone whilst they're continuing to do it. That's not a good plan. If it's something going on at workplace that we need to use the channels that are available in that workplace, we may need to look for other employment. We may need to use procedures to make our situation known. If it's a sense of injustice, a sense of bullying, we need to let that be known. So it's really important to differentiate that when we talk about forgiveness, for most of us, we're talking about forgiving the things that most people did by mistake.
Yeah.
And that's a really, and we all need to do that, and we need to do that daily. But the far extreme is when we are currently being bullied or abused, and that's a very, very different process of forgiveness.
For me, when I think about forgiveness, I always think that there's 3 different people involved. So I always think number 1 is the person, it's me. And it is trying to get to that point that you've talked about of wanting to forgive. And then I think it's about getting someone else involved. So it's getting someone that will kind of like be a cheerleader, that you can be accountable to, that you can talk to about it, that they can say, how are you doing? But also it's helpful to have that person as a Christian, so they can be praying for you, praying with you. If one day you're feeling particularly low and it's difficult, they can be praying as well. And I think then there's the whole God in it as well, because I think there's only so much we can do in our own strength. We can have willpower, we can be determined, but actually I think it's a combination of the three that actually bring us healing and bring us release. There's only so much we can do.
Yeah.
I remember the story of Corrie ten Boom, and she was in a concentration camp during the Second World War with her sister Betsy, and they'd been put in there because they were hiding some Jews, and her and her sister were treated horrendously. Her sister died in the concentration camp, and when she got out, she sought to help people find reconciliation. Wonderful, wonderful ministry of thinking, I've been through all this horrible stuff, but I want to make sure that people can move on from it and not be defined by it. And she was at a church in Germany, and at the end of it, she saw across the room one of the guards that had abused her and her sister. And immediately within her, this sense of anger and hatred came up. And this guy came bowling over to her, smiling, thank you, Fraulein, for your message. Isn't it wonderful, this message of reconciliation and how God washes away all of our sins? And he put his hand out to shake her hand. And she says in her book, The Hiding Place, she says, I couldn't lift my hand because in me, it took me back to that place. It took me back to the concentration camp, to all that he'd done. It was like this huge trigger, and this huge emotion came out within her. And she'd been working it through since she'd been out, but it was like this trigger. And so she silently prayed, God, I can't do it. You're going to have to help me because I can't forgive him. I can't lift my hand. And she stood there and she couldn't lift her hand. And so she prayed again, it's going to have to be your forgiveness. It's going to have to be your strength. You're going to have to work with me. I'm going to try and lift my hand, and I need you to help me to forgive. And so as she lifted her hand, she felt that she was filled with the Holy Spirit. And there was this sense that she was able to shake his hand, to look him in the face, and something happened within. That there was a sense of some of the anger dissipating, and her beginning to sense God's love for this guy.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't always happen like that in that instant. That's a wonderful kind of wow moment. But there's that picture of, she's saying, I can't do this on my own. That she needed God to help her to do that. And I think that's true for all of us, isn't it? It's not something that we do by ourselves, but it's something we do in the strength of God over time.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I mean, it's a very powerful book, isn't it? It's a Hiding Place, it's called. Yeah, fantastic. I think there is an element that if we practice on the little things, we're in a better place for God to use us in the big things.
Yeah.
So all of us will have been hurt in the last couple of days, irritated, annoyed by people.
Yeah.
And choosing and working out to let that go in the small things, we learn such that when the big things hit us, or it then becomes it becomes a muscle that we've developed within us that we can use. And I think God helps us in the small, and that becomes part of the big. And I think the other thing that's probably worth just throwing in at this point is to understand that forgiving someone doesn't necessitate you telling them that you've forgiven them.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can cause more damage by telling people we've forgiven them for things they didn't even know they'd hurt us on. And I've known plenty of disasters in that area. So forgiveness isn't us saying something, it's us changing our attitude.
Yeah.
And that, again, is something you practice in the small.
Yeah.
So all the niggles of the people whose post or text message we read and we thought, how dare they say that? Instead of saying, I forgive you for, let's just, okay?
Yeah.
I don't need to hold on to that. I can move on from that, and that's okay. And learning and practicing to do that on the inconsequential helps us with the big. But it's not that we have to tell somebody that we forgive them. And it's not that we are waiting for them to forgive us.
Yep.
It's something we do on ourselves, in ourselves. And that's... so I think it's kind of helpful at times to work out that it's not about us saying something necessarily.
So that again is Louise has come back with a follow-up question. Lovely to have you with us, Louise. She said, should you seek out those that have really hurt you and try to get their forgiveness? So you're saying...
I think it depends on every situation, but I would be very, very cautious.
Yeah.
I think that if we know that a person themselves is damaged and hurt by the rift in our relationship.
Yeah.
And if we know that we did hurt them in our response to how they hurt us,
Yeah.
then I think it's important to say sorry in the context of us forgiving. If, however, that person is oblivious, it may be, it's not so much that they need to know you forgive them, but they may need to become aware of how their behavior is affecting you and other people. So it might be appropriate to say, I don't want you to be a big deal about it, please can you not do that, because I find that difficult. So it might be appropriate to say something, and then when they say, oh, I'm really sorry, so it's fine, I just thought you should know.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't, my own view is there's limited value in telling people that we forgive them if it's not something on their radar. But there may be occasions when God asks us to do it and it's appropriate and right, but it's by no means the thing we have to do.